Right on rolling. Our next guest is Porfirio Chavarria, who is the Wildland Urban Interface Manager. What's your job title officially for the city?
Wildland Urban Interface Specialist.
Urban Interface Specialist. Got it. So, Porv, you do a lot of forestry management, a lot of watershed work, a lot of forest fire prevention, but also management, some prescribed burn stuff, and you work with kind of all of our regional, state, federal partners in helping us manage and prepare for wildfires. But tell us a little more about what your role is and kind of where you fit into the overall picture.
Well, I kind of see myself as more of a collaborator working through all these agencies and trying to make the best out of everything that we're doing. I collaborate a lot with homeowners associations, working with neighbors, individuals, as well as working through our federal agencies and our state agencies, and working with our partners to try and do the best that we can for Santa Fe, specifically working in the watershed area and then all around our homes that are at threat from a forest fire, maybe coming out of the watershed into, onto their property, or perhaps the reverse, fire starting, maybe a structure fire, moving into the forest and threatening other homes, their neighbors.
Sure. And how did you get into this? What's your background?
I started just as a kid, not really understanding what I wanted to do, and kind of going to community college, just taking some classes, and started doing some firefighting in the summertime months, and really enjoyed being in the outdoors. Really enjoyed the camaraderie with working with 20 other people on a hand crew, being away from family and friends for 20 days at a time, and just really enjoyed being out there. Enjoyed using fire as a tool and understanding the fire ecology and ecosystem and everything that it kind of plays its role in the forest.
Well, especially in Santa Fe. I mean, we don't have earthquakes, we don't have a lot of floods, we don't have a lot of no tornadoes. Really, our biggest threat in terms of an emergency situation, I think, probably is a wildfire.
I would agree, and I think our emergency manager agrees with that as well. And it really is. If we had a big fire, and it's everything in between. So you have a big fire, if it takes out homes, that's a big loss. If you're looking at our watershed, which provides 40% of the water, that's a huge loss to the city and everything that comes after. So the post-fire effects is what we're kind of looking at now. So if you had a big fire, what are those costs? Yeah,
and people don't always associate wildfire with water safety and water cleanliness and water quality, but it really, I think we saw after the big fire up near Los Alamos, where the rivers were just running black with ash, and there was flooding because there wasn't as much undergrowth to soak up the water. It seems like it can be a real problem.
Yeah, so that fire was the Las Conchas fire in 2011.
That's right.
And so it makes the soils hydrophobic, so basically they turn to like wax. So rain hits them and they just beat off and ends up coming down and they loosen up gravel and soil and everything else and bring it all along the way. And in fact, impacted the city because the city received some of the water from the Rio Grande Chama Buckman diversion project.
There,
and some of that sediment was ending up in the Rio Grande. And we had to shut down the pumps for the city.
Because it makes it a lot. I mean, the Buckman is it's an engineering marvel. It's unbelievable. We've had the folks on to talk about everything they do out there, but it's not designed to handle that level of sediment.
No, and I don't think any place in the state is designed to handle that amount of sediment.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you have to stop doing, any kind of water filtration through those things until all that sediment's kind of run its course through.
Cool. And so there's one fire burning right now, the commissary fire. Where is it? What's happening with it? What's the current status?
So it's about 170 acres right now. It's 13 miles east of Pecos, and our hand crew's on it. They just ordered a whole bunch of new resources to manage that fire. It was a lightning strike that happened on June 6th, and they've allowed it to grow to about 170 acres. And I believe what they're planning on doing is using that fire as a tool to reintroduce fire into the ecosystem and treat it more like a prescribed burn than an actual, it's a natural ignition that they're going to manage.
Got it, yeah.
And so I think they're going to take a look at some advantageous terrain and some features out there and allow it to do its thing. And, when all's said and done, it may end up being 7,000 acres of a nice moderate to low intensity fire.
Okay.
Completely different than what we had in Las Conchas, where you had, 48,000 acres burn in 15 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is going to take, 7,000 acres. It's probably going to take it 3 weeks to do that.
So it's nice and slow, mostly burning through the undergrowth. How big? So I was just going to ask 170 acres now, maybe up to 7,000 acres total. What's that for some folks who may not be familiar with it, like me? That sounds big. 170 acres, 7,000. It sounds like a lot. But can you put that in perspective?
So I would say an acre is roughly about a football field.
About a football field, yeah.
So you're looking at 7,000 football fields.
Yeah. Is that a big fire, or is that kind of in the scale of things? Is that kind of one of the on the smaller end of most wildfire?
So we consider most large fires anything over 100 acres.
Okay.
So it would be considered a large fire, but on the scale of things throughout the state, it's a pretty small fire compared to a lot of the fires we've had most recently.
Yeah.
And I'd say on average, it's on the bottom end of that.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. And so, in terms of policy, though, this represents a little bit of a shift that's happened in the last few years. It seems like, because for 100 years, the U.S. Forest Service policy was put out every fire immediately as soon as it starts, right? So now we're doing much more. Allowing a fire to burn for a lot of folks sounds really scary, but it's important. It's a part of the ecosystem. Tell us a little more about what the view is that leads us kind of down this road of fire management rather than fire extinguish.
Sure. So. When you exclude fire from an ecosystem, then it has to change, accept that change in a different way. So fire helps to clear underbrush. It keeps insects and pests down. It provides nutrients to the soil, and if it's done in a moderate to low intensity, it doesn't really kill a whole lot of trees, but it kills the smaller trees, the weaker trees, the diseased trees. Now, when you exclude it, then you get all of that. You get tons of trees per acre that it can't sustain itself. The soil can't sustain that amount of growth. That can't sustain. When you get rains, that doesn't cover enough water for those trees that are existing there. You get diseases from bugs, just from fungus and other types that start to kill off the trees because there's too many trees there.
Yeah.
And so that thins them out, but then what that does is it just leaves woody debris waiting for a fire to explode
Trying
through
out
there.
and just waiting, yeah.
Exactly. So when you have these low intensity fires, and they've done a great study in the Santa Fe watershed that's shown in ponderosa pine forest types, you have a fire frequency, low intensity of about every 4 to 7 years. And so this is kind of on par with that and keeping with that and hoping to provide that fire ecology through that and keeping fire in the ecosystem, because when you exclude it, then you get these massive, huge runs that we haven't seen. I mean, you can see them in the Northwest. You saw them in 2011 with Las Conchas, where you had this massive amount. They were burning something like an acre a second. So a football field in a second.
Gone in a second.
Gone in a second, leaving almost nothing left behind. The fire that's burning now, if you can look on the Forest Service's website and their Facebook page, that you can see this low intensity, 6-inch, maybe 1 foot flame lengths coming through an area, burning the top layer. The soil moistures are now, it's very unique this year. We have rain.
It's been a wet year, yeah.
It's been
absolutely.
very wet through this summer, and it's really keeping that organic matter underneath the top part, burning off the needles on top, leaving organic matter. It's going to help rejuvenate that. I'd say, by August, there'll be grasses all through that area.
Great. Well, we're looking forward to it. Any tips? We're gonna wrap up here in a second, but any tips on folks on what they can do to play a role in preventing those big out of control
folks
fires?
here in the city, I'd say they can give me a call and at 505-955-3119, and we'll go out there. We'll assess their property. We'll take a look. We'll let them know what they can do and what they can't do to help prevent a forest fire starting on their property, or if one comes around, what they can expect. Most fires that start homes on fire actually start from embers and not the actual flame. So, imagine an ember the size of a pine cone, maybe a baseball, landing on your home, landing near your house. What would it start on fire? Is it a wood pile that's right next to your home? Is it that your patio cushions that are right there next to your portal and starting up the roof on fire? Do you have a lot of needles and debris on your roof? Is that going to start on fire? So kind of looking around, thinking about, hey, what would start on fire if it, if I threw a match out there?
Yeah, and it's a great service that you guys go out personally and help do that check. So we want to make sure we're at 311-955-3119. Thanks so much for being here. We're out of time. I know there's a lot more we want to talk about, so we'll have to have you back. But what else, did you want to add anything else?
No, I think that's it for now, Matt,
Okay.
and I hope everybody stays safe for the 4th of July.
Absolutely. We'll get you back on too. So we'll come back on soon. Thanks.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.